Today I'm going to be talking about the Keeping Quilt. We're talking about a quilt. Now I had an aunt, Catherine, and she had this quilt given to her, and I'm leaning on it. Sometimes I put it over my legs to keep me warm. So let's see how this Keeping Quilt came to be. When my great-grandma Anna came to America, she wore the same thick overcoat and her big boots she had worn for farm work. But her family weren't dirt farmers anymore. In New York City, her father's work was hauling things on a wagon, and the rest of the family made artificial flowers all day. There they are. See the wagon? And they're sitting there watching. Everyone was in a hurry, and it was so crowded. Not like in back home Russia. But all the same, it was their home, and most of their neighbors were just like them. There they are. When Anna went to school, English sounded to her like pebbles dropping into a shallow water. In 6 months, she was speaking English. Her parents almost never learned, so she spoke English for them too. There she is learning from the other children. Oh, look, we've got a scarf. The only thing she had left of back home Russia was her dress and the babushka she liked to throw up into the air when she was dancing. That's like a scarf you might wear over your shoulders or over your head. And her dress was getting too small. After her mother had sewn her a new one, she took her old dress and babushka. Then from a basket of old clothes she took Uncle Valdimir's shirt, the aunt's nightdress, and an apron of Aunt Natasha's. We'll make a quilt and help us always remember home. Anna's mother said, it will be like having the family in back home Russia dance around us at night. There she is with all the material. She cut them all up to make the quilt patterns. And so it was. Anna's mother invited all the neighborhood ladies. They cut out animals and flowers from the scraps of clothing. Anna kept the needles threaded and handed them to the ladies as they needed them. The border of the quilt was made of Anna's babushka. Look at the quilt. Isn't that pretty? On Friday nights, Anna's mother would say the prayers that started the Sabbath. The family ate challah and chicken soup. The quilt was the tablecloth. There it is. Did you have chicken soup tonight? We did. Anna grew up and fell in love with great-grandpa Shasta. To show he wanted to be her husband, he gave Anna a gold coin, a dried flower, and a piece of rock salt, all tied into a linen handkerchief. The gold was for wealth, the flower for love, and the salt, so their lives would have flavor. She accepted the hanky. They were engaged. There they are, on the quilt. Under the wedding huppah, Anna and Sasha promised each other love and understanding. After the wedding, the men and women celebrated separately. Oh, look, see, all the women are over here dancing around, and the men too. And look what they used for the huppah. The quilt. Here it is. When my grandma Carl was born, Anna wrapped her daughter in the quilt to welcome her warmly into the world. Carl was a gift of gold. She was given the gift of gold, flour, salt, and bread. Gold so she would never know poverty. and be poor, a flower so she would always know love, salt so her life would always have a flavor, and bread so that she would never know hunger. There she is, wrapped up in that quilt again. Carly learned to keep the Sabbath and to cook and clean and do washing. Married, you'll be someday, Anna told Carly. There they are, hanging up the wash. And again the quilt became a wedding helper when Carly got married. This time for Carly's wedding to Grandpa George, men and women celebrated together, but they still did not dance together. In Carly's wedding bouquet was a gold coin, bread, and salt. Remember, the salt was for flavor. Carly and George moved to a farm in Michigan, and great-grandma Anna came to live with them. The quilt once again wrapped a new little girl, Mary Ellen. There she is, all wrapped up. Mary Ellen called Anna Lady Grandma. She had grown very old and was sick a lot of the time. The quilt kept her legs warm. There it is. And Anna's 98th birthday, the cake was rich with raisins and candied fruit in it. You see the candied fruit? There we go. When great-grandma Anna died, prayers were said to lift her soul to heaven. My mother, Mary Ellen, was now grown up. And look, they had kept the quilt on her to keep her warm. When Mary Ellen left home, she took the quilt with her. There she's going in her car. You see the quilt inside the car? When she became a bride, the quilt became her hapa. For the first time, friends who were not Jews came into the wedding. My mother wore a suit, but her bouquet was gold, bread, and salt. Remember, we needed the salt for the flavor. The quilt welcomed me, Patricia, into the world. There's another baby all wrapped up in the quilt. And it was the tablecloth for my first birthday party. There we go. At night, I would trace my fingers around the edges of each animal on the quilt before I went to sleep. I told my mother stories about the animals on the quilt. She told me whose sleeve was made, which sleeve had made the horse, whose apron had made the chicken, whose dress had made the flowers, and whose babushka went around the edge of the quilt. The quilt was a pretend cape when I was in the bull ring, or sometimes a tent in the streaming Amazon jungle. Look, they've got it across the clothesline. See? It makes a big tent. At my wedding, men and women danced together. In my bouquet were gold, bread, and salt, and a sprinkle of wine, so I would always know laughter. They're using it again. Look at them dancing. "20 years ago, I held Tracy Denise in the quilt for the first time. Someday she too will leave home, and she will take the quilt with her." There's the baby again. What a big family, and they all enjoyed that quilt. Goodbye.